All right. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I'm running a couple of minutes late and I apologize. I was having technical issues with my computer. Hopefully, we are good and you guys can hear me out there. Let me know if you're out there, if you can hear me fine and you're tuning in. I certainly appreciate that. This is Willie Cartwright with From Save to Sane, and I'm glad to have you with us today on the program. Um, as I always do, let me start off by saying thank you to a couple of people, beginning with Taisha Essick. You're out there. I need to reach out to Taisha. I haven't talked to her or heard from her in a while. Taisha, if you're out there, let me know that you're doing fine. I'm going to reach out to you and check on you. But let me say thank you to her. As I always say, she is partly responsible for me being here in this chair and doing this show the way we are doing it because she was an encourager and she helped me to get this thing going. Secondly, let me say thank you to my wonderful wife, who is very supportive, extremely supportive of what we do here on the program. She also helps me from time to time with some back office issues, and so again, and some technical issues. So again, I certainly appreciate her. And last but not least, I appreciate all of you out there who continue to listen to the program every other week and share and bring your comments and leave comments. And so we're appreciative of that. And so we try to keep this program going. We try to make it relevant to what's going on in today's society. Um, and so let me think, is there anything else, any housekeeping things that I need to do? But here, From Save to Sane is my book. Please pick it up. I have to always promote this. From Save to Sane, my journey away from Christianity and why Christianity has been detrimental to the African American community. Willie Cartwright. You can pick this up on Amazon, and I certainly appreciate that. We certainly appreciate that. Um, I've been mentioning to you guys, and this is again before we get started into today's topic. I've been talking to you about some of the things that we are doing here. This is my full-time occupation, not the podcasting, but being in this space. And so we are collaborating and partnering with other organizations out there that will have me come and speak, teach, and conduct some workshops. And so we're working on that. If you know of any organizations that would like to have me to come out and speak, I am a paid speaker. Um, and so if you would like for me to come out and speak to an organization, or you know of an organization that would like to have me to come out and speak and touch on these topics that we cover here on the show, or do it more broadly. And I would say, depending on the organization, more palatable, depending on your organization and where you are. Um, and so with that, that's an interesting point. One of the things that I find myself doing now is collaborating or beginning to collaborate with some religious organizations, and I think that is interesting. There are some really progressive religious organizations out there who understand the true meaning of religious freedom, which also means freedom from religion. But they also understand that we have some common ground areas that we can agree upon, or we can come in and have a debate or a dialogue about a topic that we may not necessarily agree on, but brings value to its listeners and its audiences. And so I'm finding myself working with, speaking to, reaching out to, and them reciprocating, reaching back out to me about some potential collaborations down the line. And as those things manifest themselves, I will let all of you know where you can catch that or see me. Certainly, if these events are taped, I will certainly post those on the YouTube channel. But yeah, so there are some exciting things that are happening, and we hope that there will be even more things that are happening. Let me turn my phone down. I was just um, texting with, and this is relatable. Speaking to a friend of mine who's going through some issues right now, has gone through some serious issues in the past, almost died, but is a staunch believer in God. And what he is doing at this point, and I told him, given his comments, he's starting to broach the thought of at least questioning more so than he's ever done before. He is still a stern, starch believer in God, regardless of all the things that he's going through. But yeah, and so I was having a conversation. I've been having a conversation with him all today, uh, figuratively talking him off of the ledge because of the things that's happening in his personal life, and that this God is not really showing up the way that he thought this God would show up. And ironically, one of the things we talk about on this show, um, he is blaming himself for this, and I don't necessarily blame God because I don't believe in that God. So you can't blame something that doesn't exist. But from his vantage point, the question that I asked him is, you being such a devout person and a person who's worked really hard for God in the past, why are you going through this? I've never liked the Job story in the Bible. Those of you familiar with that story in the Bible, this is kind of one of these things that he's going through. And so I was never been a person who found that story favorable. As a matter of fact, I think it's one of the more narcissistic and disgusting and deplorable stories in the Bible. I simply sum it up as God and the devil placing a bet, and this man Job and his family and his possessions are in the middle of this bet, and so he's made to suffer um, unconscionably, unconscionable things happening to his life and his family, all because God wants to win a bet with the devil. And so my friend and I we've been having this conversation. So that it was kind of related to things that we talk about here on the show. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. But of course, I'm not going to mention any names or whatever. He's a personal friend of mine, been a friend of mine for about the better part of about 30 years. But anyway, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here today. I think we have a really interesting show. I want to do it today, but I want to do it again at a later date, but probably sooner than later, because I think today I just want to sort of touch on the surface of most of these um, reasons. Um, but I want to dive deeper as we go along in the shows. And so, a couple of things that I do. I normally tell you guys where this topic came from or why I have this topic. And it is, in this particular case, it is because um, I actually saw this on a YouTube channel. And so I did some research, listened to it, looked at it, checked it against my research and my ideas and my thoughts, and thought that it would be a great topic on the podcast. Um, and then, secondly, why I'm doing this is because I mentioned a couple of weeks ago when I returned from my summer hiatus that I wanted to make the show more substantive. And I'm not saying that it hasn't been substantive before, but I wanted to make the topics more substantive, more relatable, and actually give you more meat. Those of you who are listening, those of you who may use some of this information when you talk with friends or engage in these dialogues. And so this is an attempt to make this part, at least especially this particular show, a little bit more meaty, a little bit more substantive. And so the topic for today is 10 reasons for questioning the belief in God. And so when we approach this whole space, at least I do, I approach this whole space from two perspectives. And it hasn't always been from two perspectives. Uh, Originally, when I deconverted, it was really about proving to others that God or deities did not exist, right? And that we were wasting our time worshiping this God. And for those of you in particular, the Abrahamic God, because that's my background. And so I believe that I have evolved from that. That is still a part of what I do, but that is a very small part. Now it's more about understanding why people continue to hold on to religion, the effects that religion has on our culture, and how religion affects public policy, culture, among other things. Uh, but also understanding why we still believe in gods or deities or the supernatural. We have to ask ourselves certain questions, and in asking those questions, we have to flip it over on the other side and say, well, where is the evidence, or where's the information that would lead me to believe what it is that I believe? Now, we understand historically that most people believe in a particular deity or religion or spiritual practice, either because of where they live, where they were born, what part of the world that they were born into, what is the normative religion in that part of the world, or uh, they was introduced to a religion by their parents, their family, their community. And so those are the two major reasons why we come into religion. And you're always going to find those individuals who say, well, I tested them for myself, um, and I became a believer. But this is generally after you've already been exposed and indoctrinated to um, a religious system. And so this is what happens. And so today, what we want to talk about are 10 reasons for questioning belief in God. And I'm not necessarily um, tied to getting through all 10 of them. I can do a part two, or I can come back and dive deeper into some of these topics. So I want to begin. Again, those of you who are out there, please feel free to chime in. Let me know that you're there. Let me know that you're listening. If you have a comment or a question, please put it in the chat box and we can address that. But I'm just happy to have all of you here and all of you listening to the show today. So the first one, and this is a deeper one, and we will get deeper into this, but this is, and I think maybe I'm trying to do this reverse. So this is sort of the one that drops the mic. But I'm going to start off with this one. And this is the lack of empirical evidence. So let's sort of break this down. We all know that there is a lack of empirical, objective evidence for the belief in any God, just God, deity itself. There is absolutely nothing objectively that says we should believe in God, or there's evidence that points that there is a God. Believers will have you to believe that because the sun and nature and our mere existence, and all of these anecdotal things is evidence to God, of a God, but that's not correct. Um, and my pushback to them, my challenge to them is that is not direct evidence. There are over 3,000 gods that we've created that people worship in some form of fashion. So which God are you talking about? And can you draw a direct line from nature, the sun, earth, our existence to your God, and your God being responsible, causational to those things existing, including ourselves? And the answer is no. But let's dig a little bit deeper, because my background is 40 plus years as a Christian, Baptist, but Christian. And so my God I believed in the Trinity. So I believed that Jesus was God, and that Jesus, God, and the Holy Ghost were one and the same. And that Jesus, as he existed on earth, was a manifestation of God. And when he died and was resurrected, he went back into part of that Trinity, right? And so let's let's talk about there being no empirical objective evidence, not only for Jesus Christ, the divinity, which would be the God in Jesus, or the God part of Jesus, but also Jesus, the human. And so let me make this clear. Um, arguing that a human being that fit the description of Jesus as he existed as a human being is not a hill that I am going to willing to die on. Um, I'm not saying that I believe that. I'm saying that that's not a hill that I'm willing to die on. And I know that there are other academics and there are other people in this space, uh, PhDs, people like me who have master's degrees who've studied this stuff, who will tell you that they believe that a human being by the name of Jesus Christ, that fit the description of Jesus Christ, existed. Um, but when you ask them for the evidence, they will tell you that there is no objective evidence for that. They simply believe because this is a story that has been passed down, or they may say, well, it was a number of people after the fact that believe this, or whatever the reason may be. But the reason is not going to be or will never be because there is objective evidence. And so let's make that clear. Um, all of the major so-called evidence that we may have that is supposed to be representative of Jesus Christ's divinity has been debunked. Um, the shroud of Turin has been debunked as a mid-century fake. The so-called crown of thorns is being held, and where it's been held, they are refusing to let scientists test it, and everything else that people have come up with that this is supposed to be irrefutable evidence that Jesus existed, at least the divinity part of Jesus. None of that exists. What's even more so to the fact is that at the time that Jesus lived, and I've said this and will continue to say this, this is objective. You can research this. There is absolutely zero evidence that Jesus existed. There is zero contemporaneous evidence, meaning that at the time that Jesus existed, there is absolutely nothing. There is no writing from him. There was nothing written about him at the time. There is no artifacts left. There's absolutely nothing whatsoever. Given the fact that where Jesus supposedly lived, um, that society, Roman society and every other society around that area kept meticulous records about everything, even things that are very mundane to things that are extraordinary. Meticulous records were kept. There were a number of notable historians that lived during that time period, and none of them, not one of them, wrote anything about this man Jesus. Now, keep in mind, this man Jesus was supposedly walking around, performing miracles, um, raising people from the dead, feeding the hungry, giving sight to the blind. There is absolutely no way that these kind of things could have been happening, and no one wrote anything about it at the time that it was going on. Just imagine, if you would, that these type of things were happening and no one wrote them down. Also, if you remember, if you know the Bible, at the time of Jesus' death and resurrection, there was supposed to have been a huge earthquake. The sun supposedly stood still, and people supposedly rose out of the grave and walked around. There is absolutely nowhere in history, written in any society, any civilization, where any of this happened. So you mean to tell me that the sun would stop and could be a huge earthquake and dead people would get up and walk again, and no one wrote about this as it occurred? I find that not next to impossible, but absolutely impossible to believe. And so that is one of the things that caused me personally pause, as far as believing, certainly not believing in the divinity of Jesus Christ, but certainly throwing doubt on the existence of the man. Remember, uh, um, Rome controlled the territory, and they wrote about They wrote about everything that happened, and I just refuse to believe that these things happened. Jesus was responsible for these things happening, and no one wrote about them. There's zero archaeological evidence. We have archaeological evidence of individuals, some powerful, some not so powerful, but we also have archaeological evidence from just basic mundane things in a society that are much older than that came before the time that Jesus supposedly lived, and yet we have nothing. This is supposedly the most powerful, the most well-known, the most recognizable person to ever walk the face of the earth, the most important person to ever walk the face of the earth. And we have no evidence of that. You would think that even as a God, um, knowing how these things would be viewed in the future, that he would have left something intentionally, where he would have wrote something. It would have made it a whole lot easier if we could point to something and say, Jesus existed. This is what he wrote. We authenticated it from that time period. Jesus wrote this. He existed. He is part of the God, the Godhead, the Trinity. That would make it a lot easier for people to believe. But yet we have to go on stories that were rehashed from much older religions, passed down, reinterpreted, taken out, stuff added, and now we are responsible for believing in this entity. And if we don't, we are condemned to an eternal damnation in hell, a hell in which he created, knowing that some of us would end up there if all of this is true. Um, and so that is the height of a psychopath, in my opinion. And so number one, there are no empirical evidence, objective evidence, archaeological evidence that either Jesus the man or Jesus the divinity existed. There is no contemporaneous evidence of that. Um, and so when we talk about uh, later evidence, people like Josephus, um, and some of the other ones that comes to mind that people always throw up. Uh, all of their information that they wrote about Jesus came at a minimum 30 to 40 years after Jesus died. None of them actually lived at the same time that Jesus lived. None of them met Jesus, and most of the stuff has been deemed to be fictional or made up. And the stuff that isn't fictional or made up and haven't been deemed to be fictional or made up, it is extremely vague at best and lends itself to interpretation, um, objective, subjective, subjective interpretation. And so that's where we are on that. And so we will do another show uh, taking what so-called evidence is there individually and looking at it and breaking it down so that we can really, really deep dive into it. Because I think this is extremely important for those of us who are non-believers, especially for those of us who've made the decision to deconvert and may or may not have questions about our belief system. Because in the process of deconverting, you just don't go from I believe, I'm devout to, okay, I don't believe anymore. There is a process, and in that process, you will question yourself. Those of you who've been through the process like I have, understand that there is a period of time, and it varies depending on who you are. But there is a period of time that you will continue to doubt yourself. And so, one of the things that I did in my process, and this is a 10-year process still going on now, one of the things that I've done and continue to do is that I read and research and I search for, and I look at both sides, right? In the case of this, I look at these reasons for questioning belief system and I line it up and I look at it and I objectively analyze it. But I also look at what people present as evidence as to why I should believe or why one should believe. And so I look at that as well. And so I think that's part of the process that many, if not all of us, go through as we deconvert. Those lucky ones, those of you who are lucky to have never been introduced or indoctrinated to religion, you don't have that issue. You don't have that. You don't have to go through that process like the rest of us do. Let's talk about the second reason. And those of you who've engaged in dialogue or debates with others, you've heard this one. The problem of evil. Uh, Believers have a difficult time explaining evil when that question is posed. If this God is a loving God, if He is a forgiving God, if He is a all-knowing, all-powerful God, why is it that we still have evil? Why does evil still exist? More importantly to me is why is it that He, in this case, in a sense, God created His nemesis, the devil. And we know the story, or at least the biblical story of how the devil came to be. He was once an angel in heaven, wanted to, I guess to be a big shot, and I'm putting it in very, very layman terms. Wanted to be a big shot, wanted to overthrow God. Him and a third of the angels, this is the way the story has always been told to me. A third of the angels wasn't acting right or whatever it is the case be, and God threw them out of heaven. But the question would be, one of the questions, or the first questions I would ask, the question I would ask in dealing with the problem of sin, the problem of evil, is why hasn't God destroyed Satan or the devil? As a matter of fact, God allowed His Son, in this case Jesus, to be persecuted and hung from a cross, as opposed to as a way of giving us an opportunity to gain heaven. He could have either forgiven us, right, or He could have just removed evil. Even in the case of Adam and Eve, which is where all of this started from, Eve being tempted by Satan, the snake, the serpent, again, evil. Why did God even allow that to exist? He could have that could not have been a thing, and none of this would be going on. But God allowed this serpent, this devil, this evil to exist and tempt Eve. And now all of us, all of us are born into sin because of something that someone that we never met, never known, it's not attached to in any kind of way, did 6,000 years ago or whatever, however you do the math in the Bible. It is asinine to me that this is the deal. And so here's one of the things that I always say. If I was God, and I think that I can probably get close to 100% of the people to agree with me. The evil that is childhood cancer, the evil that is famine and homelessness, especially in the case of children, because they have no way of fighting that, right? They're dependent on their parents or other adults. That would be completely eliminated. I think at a very basic level, that would be evil, or those would be evil things that I would absolutely eliminate. My wife and I, many years ago, when we had our business was doing extremely well, we would contribute, and I'll keep messing with my glasses because I got the wrong glasses on. We would donate to various organizations. One of the organizations that we donated to at the time was St. Jude's. And St. Jude's, if you're familiar with St. Jude's, and I think it's Danny Thomas. Some of you might not be old enough to remember Danny Thomas, but it is, St. Jude's Hospital that takes care of kids who have childhood cancer. And it's pretty much free, the service, the treatment, and all of that. And so it allows the parents to focus on their child getting better. Um, I don't have any kids. I have a niece and a nephew, and they are grown and old. I don't have any kids, but I cannot imagine a worse pain than watching your kids suffer from cancer, your young babies, your young children. I cannot imagine anything more traumatic, more horrendous, more painful, more hurtful than losing a child at a very young age. Um, unfortunately, I have several friends who have lost their children at a relatively young age, everything from really young to early 20s, which I still consider to be young because you haven't had an opportunity to live your life. I lost my godson at he had just turned, like literally had just turned 30, but he was still a baby, a child in life. Had opportunity to experience life, and I've been really good friends with his mother and his sister, which is our goddaughter. Watching what they went through and the rest of the family it's just tremendous pain. And so the problem of evil, I think the fact that I or anyone else would at least eliminate that automatically makes us better than this God that you claim to worship. There is no reason whatsoever for those kind of ailments to exist in the life of a young child. Uh, Famine, kids have to endure hunger. I mean, real hunger, living in the streets, uh, fitting for themselves, homelessness, no clothing. Those are things that really, really bother me. Um, and so I even as a God, that those would be evil things that I would absolutely have to eliminate if I was God. And so that makes me better than your God. And so the second issue is the problem of evil. If your God is loving, all knowing, all powerful, all loving, why do we still have evil? And so, again, this causes me to question um, God, the existence of a God, or at least the existence of a God that is described, um, especially in the New Testament of the Bible. The Old Testament, God is a little rougher. He's less loving, less caring. And so this is also one of the issues as we read the Bible, as we go from the Old Testament to the New Testament, we see how the creators and writers of the Bible is sort of softening the God figure so that he's more palatable to others. Where in the Old Testament, he was not that God. He was not the gentle God. He was more of the vengeful, fiery God, and so he went through a metamorphosis going into the New Testament, where he became a slightly more loving and slightly more forgiving God. So let me get to the third. So the third one is the inconsistencies in religious texts. And so when I say inconsistencies in religious texts, we're not talking about the misspelling of a word or minor details. We're talking about major, major, major details. There are two or three different variations of the resurrection story, the Jesus birth story. But one of the things that I find really interesting that a lot of people sort of overlook or are not aware of is this here. There are at least two genealogy stories of Jesus Christ, right? At least two in the Bible, two different stories. But before we talk about it, let's back up. For those of you who don't know, who are not familiar with why this is important, Jesus is supposed to be the culmination, the fulfillment of prophecy. That prophecy is that a Messiah, a Savior, would come, and he would come through the seed of David, which means that he would be biologically related to David. In the Bible, Joseph Jesus's stepfather is a direct descendant of David. But Joseph is not Jesus's biological father because Jesus was born of a virgin and the father of Jesus is the Holy Spirit or God. So that in itself shows you that Jesus cannot be the Messiah, if that's your thing, because Jesus is not the biological descendant of David. Mary is not, there's nowhere in the Bible that says that Mary is a descendant of David, a direct descendant of David, a biological descendant of David. As a matter of fact, when they do the genealogy, both genealogies, there's some mixing pieces, some stuff in the middle that's not the same. But Joseph is absolutely a biological descendant of David. And so Jesus could not possibly be the Messiah because he is not a direct descendant of David, because Joseph is not his biological father. What's going on? We have Saran Leto. Don't let me mess it up. I apologize if I did. Peace to you too, bro. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And then we have Texas Goddess. What's going on? Glad to see you, Texas guys. Hope everything is well with you. Yeah, glad to have you. We're just talking about, I don't know if you've been listening prior to chiming in, but we've been talking about 10 reasons for questioning belief in God. The first one, we talked about the lack of empirical evidence. And as I stated before, I'm going to do an additional show where we dig deeper into some of these topics. The second one was the problem of evil. And I'm now discussing the third issue, which is the inconsistencies in the religious text. And so we talked about, when I say inconsistencies in the religious text, we talked about the variations of Jesus' birth stories, the variations of his resurrection stories, who saw him first, who recorded it. But what I just talked about when you guys chimed in was the fact of the genealogy of Jesus does not fit what it should be, because Jesus supposedly is to fulfill the prophecy by being the Messiah, by being the seed of David, through the seed of David. And so Joseph is a direct descendant of David, but Jesus is not Joseph's biological father. So he could not be the Messiah because he is not a direct descendant of David. And there are many other inconsistencies in the religious text. But the fact that there are these inconsistencies, even with the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, these inconsistencies are notable. These are not minor inconsistencies. And then one of the other things that needs to be discussed when we talk about the inconsistencies of the Bible is Paul. And so many of us have our idea of Jesus Christ and our idea of Christianity from Paul. In Paul's writings, Paul never ever wrote about or talked about Jesus the human. Paul's writing of Jesus is more of a mysticist. He speaks of Jesus in a spiritual sense. He never met Jesus, never knew Jesus. All the things he wrote about Jesus was from dreams that he had, that he interpreted, or that were interpreted. So imagine you being a famous person, and you go on and you try to leave a legacy and you pass away. But the only history about you is being told from someone who lived decades after you did, who never met you, and who only know about you from dreams that they have. So that's what we're talking about. Saran said that facts, Paul made a lot of stuff up. Absolutely. I mean, there is absolutely no way for him not to make stuff up. But yet, there are a lot of Paulinian Christians, as they call it, as we call it, that this is their version of Christianity, and so there are many inconsistencies. Again, writing absolutely nothing about the human Jesus, how he existed as a human on earth. None of that. Never talked about his birth. Never talked about any of that. All of this is from a spiritual sort of sense. And so, what we believe, what a lot of academics believe in this space, was that Paul sort of took ideas from other religions that had been around in the area for much longer period of time. He took pieces of that to create for Jews and Gentiles this Jesus, this divine figure um, that we can, that they could sort of grasp onto. Um, Black folks here in South Carolina love Paul. Really, you know what? It's ironic. I growing up in the church, um, I was familiar with Paul. The churches that I attended talked about Paul, but it was not an emphasis on Paul. And well, let me back up. It wasn't an emphasis where there wasn't. It wasn't like, okay, this is what Paul said. It was like, this is what was said by Paul in the letters or whatever. So it wasn't like, okay, we got to follow Paul. I mean, Paul is the man. So it wasn't that. But as I've gotten older and got into my studies and into the space, I've heard more and more about people really following Paul, to the point where I've seen where there's been conflict between Paulinian Christians and non-Paulinian Christians because they refuse to, or they have an issue with a lot of the stuff that Paul wrote regarding Jesus and Christianity. And so I've seen that. Uh, Serapis is one of them, absolutely. So it also says they will fight over Paul here, LOL. They talk about Paul, then Jesus. Yeah, and that you wasn't on. I don't know if you heard me earlier, but I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's very devout, but he's going through some stuff right now. He is one of these individuals that is sort of anti-Paul and the teachings of Paul. And so he is one of the people that I know that really pushes back hard on the teachings of Paul, and the teachings of Paul being sort of the standard for Christianity. So yeah, so absolutely, I appreciate that input. Thank you for being here. I don't think this is your first time, but if it is, certainly welcome. But I thank you for being here. Let me get to number 4. This is one of my favorites. God of the gaps fallacy. So again, I take this from a historical standpoint. It is my belief, backed and supported by substantial evidence and research and readings, that humanity came up with the concept of gods as a way to explain things that we could not explain. A good example of that would be the reason why we believed in gods like Zeus, Apollo, Achilles, some of these other ones, and Thor being another, because we use them to explain phenomenons that we could not explain, like lightning and thunder, rain, earthquakes, those things. And so when we did not understand or could not put them in a human perspective, we said, we created gods. And as time went along, everything that we could not understand or didn't know at the time, it must be God. But if you notice, all of those gods have died out based on our level of understanding and knowledge of these phenomenons. We no longer worship Thor, the god of thunder or whatever he was, because we understand the natural way that thunder comes about. We understand that rain and lightning and earthquakes are all natural phenomenons that there are natural reasons for. And so, for the most part, the gods that we have now are the last vestiges of those things that we don't understand. And so you will get arguments from those believers who run to what I call their last holding to hold on to is, okay, how did we get here? How do we exist? And so what I've said to them uh, is twofold. Science gives us the most plausible explanation for our existence through Big Bang, natural selection, and evolution, right? That doesn't mean that it is absolutely correct. That doesn't mean that it won't change, because it has changed and evolved over time. But what it says is that that is the most plausible explanation for our existence today based on the evidence, the scientific evidence that we have now. That's phase one. That's part one of my answer to people and my pushback. The second part is, if you refuse to believe that or you have a problem with that, that's fine, right? Um, Even if you were successful in debunking Big Bang, evolution, and natural selection, that would not at all prove that your God and creation theory is correct, right? So there is a difference between a scientific theory and just a regular theory. A scientific theory begins with a hypothesis, and it becomes a theory after enough evidence is presented and it is peer reviewed to where, okay, it makes sense based on the evidence that we have. Then it becomes a scientific theory. The theory of creation is just that. It is simply an hypothesis that is here by virtue of mythology and fiction. There is no objective evidence that leads us to believe that the creation story is real. Absolutely not. No man in the skies created everything that we know of in 6 days and rested on the seventh day. There is absolutely no evidence of that. And disproving one theory does not make your theory correct. And so I have to say that all the time to people that I engage in arguments with. And so what they're practicing is God of the gaps. I don't understand. I don't know. Thus, therefore, the answer must be God, right? That doesn't work for us who are free thinkers. Um, it is one of the issues that humanity has is its inability to say, I don't know. It is something in us that makes us collectively feel the need to know everything. And because there are so many things that we don't know, my wife and I talk about this all the time. We really believe that we probably know half of 1% or whatever less than everything that's going on. But because we have this insatiable desire and this insatiable need to know everything, if we don't know it, for most of us, the answer must be God. And so that is, I believe, in part as to how we got gods. So there's this God of the gaps uh, fallacy. People can believe it, but there's no objective evidence that supports it whatsoever. Um, and you would think that this God can present evidence, um, and it's not evidence that will compel us or make us take away our free will to believe in Him. But it is evidence. We would appreciate evidence that we're not guessing, evidence that's not vague, evidence that's not subjective to subjective interpretation. Because that subjective interpretation is just that, it is subjective, depending on who you're speaking with and the context and the context that it is given in. That's why we have 3,000 different gods and 45,000 different denominations of just Christianity, because of people's subjective interpretation of religion. And so God of the Gaps is the fourth one on our list. And I think we'll do the fifth one and we'll sort of stop there. And we sort of touched on this earlier, but this is the evolution theory, um, natural selection, and um, uh, Big Bang. So there is when believers who are not astute and don't have the acumen to properly argue this, they tend to lump the three together, but they are actually separate. Uh, Big Bang, first of all, the first thing that they would say is, well, how did something come from nothing? Well, that is not what Big Bang says. Big Bang does not say we got something from nothing. Big Bang there is simply an expansion of what was already there. We as humanity began to calculate time from the beginning of what we see as the beginning of that expansion. But it was already there, the universe, whatever was already there, and it just continued to expand as we saw it. So it is an extension, it is an expansion of what was already there. So it is not creating something from nothing. That's number one. Um, and through the Big Bang, what scientists have been able to do up to a certain point is recreate the environment where, well, first, let me back up. What scientists have discovered is that the basic building blocks that is needed for human life have always existed, or at least exist in the universe, on other planets and other parts of the universe. And what they've been able to do is recreate what they believe is the environment, the natural environment that enabled these building blocks to come together naturally and start to form the very basic compounds that eventually, over billions of years, led to the formation of human beings. Now, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a biologist. I'm not in that field. I have read enough of it, and even if it sounds um, uh, 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 sort of at a reach, understand two things. These are scientists who do this for a living, who've done this over many, many decades and centuries now. This is what they're coming up with. Again, I'm not saying that it's absolutely true and that it should be the thing. But secondly, and I think more importantly, it is far more evidence for that than what we would have for the creation story, right? And so, a person like me, I am extremely comfortable with saying, I don't know. But when people ask me, I said scientists have given us the most plausible explanation for our existence, beginning with Big Bang. If they don't accept that, then I'm fine with that because I can say, listen, okay, I don't know. What's your theory? Oh, the creation story? Where's the evidence? Where's any evidence for that? Oh, absolutely none. Okay, okay, right, absolutely. And so, secondly, evolution and natural selection. So, evolution by virtue of natural selection, and so you have micro evolution, where people say there's small changes. A big one example that I use all the time about micro evolution evolving is those of us who are lactose intolerant. If you know the history of mankind, most people that are from Africa and Asia uh, were not lactose tolerant. We were lactose intolerant. And it was people from Europe who were lactose tolerant because of the need to that. I mean, you can look at stuff like the amount of hair that some Europeans have compared to less hair that maybe Africans have because of the climate, the size of our noses, the texture of our hair. All of those things are micro evolutionary things. Um, and so that exists. And so scientists have been able to uh, extrapolate those things out and get us to where we are now to say this, and this happened. Again, I'm not an expert. It doesn't bother me that people may not believe this. But here's the thing: you don't have a better explanation that is supported by evidence, right? And so until then, I am very comfortable with believing, uh, at least to the point that scientists are on the right track if they don't have even if they don't have all of the answers. And I'm also comfortable with believing that we just don't know yet as a society, as a group of human beings, how we got here. And so what I will not fall into is the whole God of the gaps fallacy. I am not going to insert God into places simply because I don't know the answer to anything. Neo X, what's going on? Peace, everyone. This is Neo X. If you guys have time, if you guys have multiple hours, you can check out her channel. She's got some good things going on her channel. But like I'm usually around an hour. Neo is about 6, 7 hours or longer. I don't know. So if you got any time to check out Neo's show, Neo and I are going to collaborate on the show sometime soon. At least that's what I was told by Neo. So look out for that. And I think it'll be Neo, myself, and some other people. But yeah, so Neo is also a person who was came along when I was just getting started, and so we sort of found each other. She said, I've gotten better. It's 3 hours now. Okay, so you guys got 3 hours. Listen to it. But it's some great information, some great shows. Neo is wise in this space, and so we certainly appreciate that. So I encourage you to support all of us. And so I'm going to sort of wrap up on that note. I have 5 more, but we'll do that on the next show. But let me say this, since Neo is here and sort of reminded me of that. One of the things that I've been speaking with people of color in this space. And one of the things that I found to be, I am fortunate enough to be on the board of directors of a secular organization. And one of the other members on that board is a very well known, extremely well known YouTuber. He is not African American, but when he talks about the space that he's sharing with the likes of Matt Dillahunty and Amin Ra and some of these other people, um, I just think about the coverage that they're getting, the size of their audience, and eventually this translates into them living a very comfortable life from a financial standpoint. Now, understand this: people like Neo and myself, and Taisha and other people who are in this, other people of color who are in this space, uh, doing this for the money is absolutely not at the top of our list because we understand what we're getting into. We do this because we feel like the information is important. There's a need for it. This community of people of color who are uh, outside of the traditional religious spaces is growing, and so that's there. But one of the things that I have been saying, and I had this conversation with the person who is over or who is head of the Black Non-Believers organization there in Atlanta. Her and I had a long conversation about a month ago at a conference. We need to find a way to bring more of us together and create sort of our own space because there's a lot of people out there that's searching and looking for us, but they need to be able to find us, all of us, or at least more of us. And I think also it would be encouraging um, and be instrumental in other people who think like us coming out and being more vocal and more out as we share or borrow a term from the LGBTQ community, being out about their disbelief. Um, and so I just sort of wanted to sort of throw that out there, and I've been loosely speaking with some people about doing this on social media and how what this would look like, and so that's something that we should sort of look forward to and kind of do it. So yeah, so we would do that, but I think all of you, Neo, Saran, Texas Goddess, and everyone else out there, thank you for joining in. I think I was about 3 minutes late, but I apologize. I had some technical issues, but yeah. So look for me in 2 weeks. We will be back. Again, I would keep you guys updated on the work I'm doing outside of the podcast because I'm starting to collaborate more and get into some more speaking engagements. And so I will let you guys know where to find those things. But thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Christine, what's going on? I was about to click off, but glad to see you. Hope you heard the entire show. If not, you can go back and listen to it. But I appreciate it. Glad to see you here. And so I know it's going to take a couple of weeks to get everything back up and going regular time because I had been out for the entire summer. But yeah, glad to have all of you. So again, I'll sign off. See you in a couple of weeks. See you in 2 weeks.